So, good morning, Carter.
George?
Tell me a little bit about that piece that you did.
Yes. I was teaching a workshop.
Yeah.
And that's just something I did to show the workshop attendees kind of what can happen if you just kind of play with stuff.
Well, I know at home in the hut you have a piece that I long for, and that's very much like it.
Oh yeah, the
cross.
The cross that I have hanging in the living room.
Yeah, I was actually visiting Carter. I was sitting in his kitchen looking across a very long living room, and this piece is glowing off the wall. I'm like, where's the light source coming from? Just like this one, there's no light on that except for natural light.
It feels like it comes from within.
It does. I mean, it's bizarre. So I'm looking at it. I walk over to it. I'm looking around. No lights. So I started taking pictures of it and it was glowing out of the fabric. I mean, yeah, just like this one's amazing. So where do you get the ideas for this?
I don't know. I just do it. I guess I've been doing it for so long that it becomes quite natural. You just kind of, gather the material together, and there may be 4 or 5 ties in it. And you never know what they're going to look like. It's one of those things that you can't plan. It just kind of happens.
Yeah, I see. Even in this one, I see Buddhas, crosses.
Oh yeah, there's a lot.
Where do the Buddhas come from?
It's kind of from the
universe.
Yeah.
And so you what is it you think is happening? Like you're capturing a distant energy or a close energy, or?
I don't know. I think when I'm working, I'm not really even paying attention. So I guess
so it's just flowing through.
It just flows through me. I think that, and the less I pay attention, the more powerful the pieces are.
Wow.
And also to capture that kind of energy on silk is really extraordinary. And I think to me the things that this most connects to are wings of butterflies. And you see the symmetry, and you see the symmetry in wings. And of course, silk is a cocoon. It's the vehicle of transformation from caterpillar to butterfly. So it's interesting how silk captures color and how it kind of compresses and creates a landscape, a 3-dimensional landscape that it becomes interpreted into a 2-dimensional landscape when you apply the dyes. And however you apply the dyes then gives it another kind of presentation.
I was always fascinated that the monks all wear silk, and somewhere I read or heard, they believe that when they wear the silk, it protects them from the grosser elements of the universe.
That may very well be. To me, one of the things that I love about silk, and particularly when I'm doing textiles for clothing, is how the silk interacts with the woman who's wearing it. So to me, when you get the right colors and you get the right design, there's really a tremendous upgrade in how that woman presents herself, how people perceive her. And I think to me, how people perceive us is reflective of how we see ourselves. So to me, I love to see the women put the clothes on. I love to see how they kind of sparkle when that transition of how that piece actually interacts with them, and each piece reacts with different women differently. And so that's been one of the more fascinating, one of the more challenging, and one of the more rewarding things that I've been doing over the years, is to see women all of a sudden have another dimension that, I don't know, that's why I love doing it.
A couple of years ago, I had an app on my iPhone, and it was Curlian app, and it took the energies of the colors. And you were telling a story about how you feel like this energy comes into you and starts to flow. I think I'm going to take a break here. I'm going to run and get these photos. So I ran upstairs and got some of these photos from a couple of years ago when we came to visit you. And I love this piece. I didn't see that picture. Did you sell this one?
No. These are what I call treasures, and this piece is about I would say it's 20 feet long and it's 10 feet wide. And this piece actually was tied in Nigeria, and then it came back, and it was a whole landscape of silk. It had taken up pretty much this whole table here. And what I did was I had to invent a technique to dye it.
So you mean tie it took up? Yeah.
Well, what I did was I pleated it and I over-pleated it. I had to do all these things in order to get it into a context.
Yeah, let me show you what a tied piece looks like. Now that's probably how many yards?
Oh, that's about 6.
About 6 yards.
That's about half the size, or between a third and half the size of
so
this
how many
piece.
knots are in something like this?
There are no knots.
And then here's some of the other treasures that were in his treasure room in Massachusetts.
Yeah, and this is my treasure room. In this treasure room, there are probably 200, 300 really amazing pieces.
Here's one of the dresses that he did for Shirley. I think we sold it. It was upstairs. And this was this one this, or is this
No,
different
that's a different one. That's another treasure. It's sort of like, to me, it's like the 4th of July. All this color is exploding.
This is the piece I was telling you about in his home, where I was looking across the kitchen, and this is on the wall, far, far away, and it just, there's no light on this. This is in pretty much a dark room, and it's glowing off the wall. And let me find the piece I was telling you about before so much. The picture. That's pretty interesting. What's that about?
You know, this is a digital print that I did. I took a picture of one of my treasures, and then I put it on the computer, and then I printed it onto. I photoshopped it, and then printed that image onto a piece of silk.
The majority of your work and what you're famous for is called shibori, right?
Shibori,
yeah. So Carter told me that he doesn't really know what's going on after the pieces are tied. Then he goes into his dyeing room and he starts working with the dyes, and he dips and unties and unties and dips. And
ties.
I got this picture. This is the app on the iPhone, and you see the energy coming down into it. This is a mind-boggling picture to me. So he didn't even know I was taking this, and this is the energy coming down into him, going into his hands and then into the fabric, and then it doesn't stop there. The other thing is the fabric then contains that energy, and when a woman wears these pieces, she's wearing this energy.
There's definitely a vibration. And it's interesting because years ago I was working one day and I realized that I really wasn't controlling the process, that things were just happening in front of me. And I sort of paused to think about what was happening, what was I experiencing, and I really felt all of a sudden I could experience the energy coming down through the top of my head, and it just
there's the energy coming into the top of his head, which is pretty bizarre to have a picture like that. And then this is an old stick he picked up in his yard, and he's been using this. Do you still use this stick? Do you remember it? Yeah. And this is energy. The stick has received the energy that was coming down through the top of his head, through his hands, into the sticks. And there's a picture of the stick, which is, again, just bizarre. And then I love that he still does a lot of his own sewing. This is a picture with Shirley, and they're working on a dress probably, or a piece of fabric, and deciding what they're going to do. What kind of, is it going to be a dress, a pant, or whatever they're going to do with it. And then here's just some more pictures I thought were interesting. That's another.
That was a piece actually that my son taught, and we worked together for 25 years before my son graduated into becoming a nurse. He started working with me when he was about 14 and worked until he was about 40. So he's been very much a part of the process.
Now these are patterns, and over the years I've always been fascinated by Tibetan things. And this is more than just a pattern. Carter thinks this is natural, and I pointed out to him, excuse me, this isn't very natural. This is something that the Tibetans do when they're making sacred patterns. And, well, go ahead and tell me what you did here.
Well, I had a client who would buy anything that was original. So over the period of 2 years, I designed approximately 500 original designs, and she bought almost all of them. So the challenge was...
Bye-bye, sweetheart.
The challenge was I had a book, and every page in the book I wrote down one of these patterns. So I went through 500 different patterns to sort of satiate her appetite. And I don't know, it was just a challenge. If I was going someplace on the airplane, I'd take the book along.
And what were you thinking when you were doing these? Because these, this is more like sacred geometry than a pattern. I know.
I don't know. I just kept drawing them. There was kind of no end. And then I give them to my seamstresses, the patterns, and then I give them a black fabric and the shibori, the dyed fabric, and they would fill in the put those mosaic patterns together and make the clothes out of them.
Wow. We're going to take a moment and go up into the house and take a picture of this incredible. It's a print that you did, right?
Yeah, I did Photoshopped it, and it's derivative of a photograph that I did of kale. I had kale that was sitting out on the counter, and I took a photograph of it because I thought the colors were interesting. And from that one photograph, I've done 200 different images that I then have printed onto silk. So.
And maybe take a few pictures down here. There's some incredible treasures down here. When I was a kid growing up in Coconut Grove, there was a famous playboy named Baron Seppi de Brognac. And I've been fortunate my whole life meeting just the most incredible, crazy people. Seppi was married to the original IBM heiress. And in the late 50s and early 60s, they had their own plane, which doesn't seem like a big deal today. Most wealthy people have a plane. But in those days, that was a big deal. And they would travel all over the world. They went to Easter Island. He loved Bali, so he was always in Bali, Indonesia. He would buy things and then take them to Bali and have them made. And he loved backgammon. This is a backgammon set that Seppi had made in Bali, but the wood comes from Africa. It's ebony. This weighs probably 150 pounds. And when he was getting ready to check out of this world and going to wherever he went, yeah, look at the detail. Look at the dragons. Look at the dragons on that leg.
They're pretty amazing.
So Shirley and I went to see him, pretty much to say goodbye. We knew he was in pretty bad health, and he was 88 years old. And so he said, "Well, I want you to have something to remember me." And we had been playing on this backgammon table for over 30 years.
Wow.
And so he said, "I want you to have this." And I always had a love-hate relationship. Someday we'll do a whole thing on Seppi because he was amazing. So he gives me this incredible board. And Shirley says, "Well, how about these are called pips, how about the pips?" He says, "What, are you crazy? $50 each." So he just gave me a priceless backgammon board. And this is priceless. They don't do this anymore. There's no more ebony. And nobody ever carved ebony like this. I mean, these dragons are phenomenal. And then he charged me for the pips. So why don't we take a break and go up and look at the other?
All right, that's great.
These are more of Seppi's treasures. He found these in the early 70s. They're wood. And they were carved for a temple in Bali. And Shirley and I collected these from him, about 5 years ago. They're just spectacular. Maybe get a close-up of that over there on the left. Garuda was a mythical creature of who knows what's mythical. And he had to free his mother from the snakes, the asuras. You see pictures of Vishnu, he's laying on a bed of snakes. And they had the elixir for immortality. And he broke into Vishnu's abode to steal the elixir of immortality so he could give it to the snakes to free his mother. And the Garudas and the Asuras have been, I think Asuras is the right term, have been dreaded enemies. And so they kidnapped his mother, and the ransom was the elixir. Well, Vishnu found him trying to steal the elixir, and he said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, they captured my mother. I have to give this to them so that they'll release her." And Vishnu says, "All right, well, go ahead and take it, and then we'll deal with the situation later, and I'll get the elixir back." And so after all was done, the mother was released. Vishnu said, "Rather than us fight, why don't we make some kind of deal so that you can pay for this, what you've done?" And Garuda said, "Sure, what do you want?" And he says, "I want you to be my transport through the universe." And so when you see pictures of Vishnu, Lakshmi traveling through the universe, they're usually riding on Garuda's back. Great story. I think it's a great story. And now we're looking at this. This is a pretty far out piece of your work, Carter. Tell us a little bit about it.
Again, this is a piece that came from the photographs I did of one section of kale, and it's one of the 200 prints that I did. And it was a print that actually I was not very satisfied with in terms of making it into a piece of clothing, but I did stretch it. I actually destroyed the original print, and I stretched it afterwards. And once I stretched it, I realized the impact and the power of the piece. So this becomes a monoprint. I can't reproduce it, but as I put it together, I think George and Shirley came up to visit me in the hut where my studio is, and were immediately captivated by this piece. It was stretched. I unstretched it. I brought the piece down here and I stretched it back again. I got the stretcher bar shipped here. And to me, it just sort of, it's like a meditation piece. Each time I look at this piece, I'm drawn into a different part of it, a different detail. And one of the things that's really neat about it is you see all the veins in it. And the veins are the veins of the kale, but to me, the veins make it very much alive. So this is almost like something that pulsates and something that breathes and pumps energy and blood and power through the piece. And to me, I'm always like totally, I don't know, just sort of taken in with this piece. I sort of go into it.
Yeah, when you start meditating on it, there's all kinds of passages that take you to other places. It's like gates, and it's an incredible piece. One of my favorite pieces of art I've ever seen after all these years. So, did we ever name it? Did you name it? Doesn't have a name.
No.
Yeah. It's that powerful, doesn't need one.
Doesn't have, no, if you named it, I think you'd limit it. So
Yeah.
there's so many things going on that a name would only
Confuse it.
would only sort of direct you in one direction.
Right.
This goes in many different directions. So I think if I were to name it, it would take me probably about a month to name it, and it would have probably 100 different names.
The painting of 100 names. So now, what are your plans? You're leaving us when?
I'm leaving day after Christmas, and eventually I'm going to end up coming home right before New Year's.
All right. Well, this was really a pleasure, and then thank you for putting this all down for us.
No problem. Not a problem. Actually, I enjoyed this.
And the first one was amazing. The first video you did, so I can't wait to see this one. And I think we'll call it a wrap.
All right. Great. Thank you.
So the little picture is a very famous teacher from Trinidad and Tobago. His name is Shastri Maharaj. Interesting character. And I don't know what they're doing there, but it looks like some type of ceremony where the imam is blessing them. They're bringing offerings to the palm tree. And that Shastra's work.
Why don't we take this piece, George, and move it over here? Looks like it weighs about 500 pounds.
You get a panoramic view of the downstairs gallery?
I'll take it.
Big piece.
Yeah, there are some interesting artists that I've met. You know, a lot of people have the good fortune of collecting art. I've had the great fortune of collecting artists. And every one of these pieces has a story and a wonderful interaction with the artists themselves. All right, why don't we go upstairs?